Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 294. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, um, Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Wow, we are creeping up on show 300. Show 300's right around the corner.
I know,
Oh
right?
my God. Yeah. And
Yep.
we'll still be on lockdown, I think. Crazy, crazy.
Yeah, the way this
Wow.
pandemic is going, particularly here in the States, yeah, we're going to be on lockdown for a while. I'm guessing the rest of 2020, at least. So yeah, Pound for Pound Box Report. Live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. For the time being, if you want to check out all the latest regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Um, Check the top right of the blog page. You will find information, where to follow us on social media, where to find us on social media, where to find us on all platform RSS feed that distributes podcasts, your Spotify, your iTunes, etc., where you can donate. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link, and also the Coach to my online fitness coaching page. I am an online coach for Beachbody. If you're interested in a 2-week trial, they run throughout the year over on Beachbody On Demand. If you're interested in any of the programs on Beachbody, be it the classic P90X series, be it the Insanity series, be it the Shift Shop, be it the 6 weeks of the work, um, and all other bar blend for the ladies. They really like bar blend bar blend programs. Excuse me. Please check out my online coaching link on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page, and as an extension, separate from the fitness stuff, but connected to the boxing stuff. Every year we do a Ladies Love Boxing series where it was just me and exclusively women on the show talking the sweet science. I hope, I hope, uh, fingers crossed, to do the next edition of Ladies Love Boxing show the week of Delphine Pearson Katie Taylor rematch. So if you're a lady, for all the ladies out there who are follow the sweet science, who like the sweet science, who like their boxing, if you are interested in coming on to the show, please hit that Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page at P, the number 4, the number P Boxing Report on Twitter, or just hit me up on my personal email, not email, but personal Twitter page, Brother JR at Brother JR76. Or hit me up on Instagram, Brother JRSC. If you're interested, after this show, I'm going to try to reach out to the folks, and hopefully Gail will assist me into that. With that, for all ladies who are interested, who want to talk boxing, again, the tentative goal is to do a show the week of Taylor Pearson 2, since that's going to be a highly anticipated women's bout. There you go. So let's get the show started. Recapping things that happened this past week and this past weekend. Um, let's start with Showtime. They had their preview card. Their not their preview, but their starting things back up post COVID pandemic. As this was initially going to be, give me a quick second here. This was initially going to be Stephen Fuller fighting Angelo Leo for the vacant WBO title at 122 pounds. As we discussed last week during the show, breaking news was that Fulton Jr. tested positive for COVID-19, so he had to pull out the bout. In his replacement was Tramaine Williams, a TMT fighter with the Money Team. He ended up fighting Leo from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And to the surprise of maybe some, Leo, he out physicaled, out rough. He was the stronger fighter. He was the more active fighter against the Southpaw Williams, and kind of pounded out a decision. Unanimous decision, I believe it was, with the town on Williams' body throughout. I'm guessing that Williams probably still pissing blood, giving them out. He got hit to the ribs and to the solar plexus and just all over his body with tremendous body work from Leo all night long. He kept up the pressure all night long, and William just couldn't hold him off. I'm going to you, Gail. Leo from Albuquerque, I mentioned, joined Johnny Tapia, Danny Romero as world champions from that city. For folks who didn't know him, they know him now. Please break down the fight. And is Leo kind of an emerging force now with Navarrete moving up to 126 pounds? Is he like kind of one of the new it guys at junior featherweight?
I do think he's a new it guy. He's benefiting from a lot of circumstances. Number one, just what you mentioned, with Navarrete out of the way, he's got a clear lane. He looks like he's ready to seize it. Go for it. I like that attitude a lot. Number two, pandemic universe. Guys that are willing to get out there, give it their shot.
Okay.
They're not arguing about money. They're not arguing about a lot of the other little things and fans and whining and this and that. Now's the time for those guys to strike, because with others wanting to sit on the sidelines, and then maybe some have very good reason. I get that. But again, opportunity knocks. He's willing to answer the door, open the door, and bust through the door. He's a good-looking guy. I love this idea of him being from Albuquerque, although the truth is he's been training in Las Vegas for quite some time. And by the way, props to him for being recognized out of Albuquerque. And when he was, he said, oh, and don't forget Holly Holm. So he gives a shout out to Holly Holm as an Albuquerque native. I thought that was very classy. Thank you, Leo, Mr. Leo. He did a good job. His skills are really solid. I am a big, big fan of any fighter who concentrates on body work like he did. It always pays off. It always works. As long as you can get to somebody sufficiently, especially if a guy is willing to stand and trade with you, knowing that you have a body attack, you're going to prevail every time. He needs to add, a few more skills to his skill set, but at this stage of his career, that's perfectly okay. I'm liking what I see. And, given the circumstances, losing, the A side of that bout, he stepped in ably. Guys that seize these opportunities are going to win in the long run. No doubt about it.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Your assessment of what you saw. How impressed were you with Leo?
That was a little bit rough in the first couple of rounds, but then he found his groove around the third and fourth round. Good, solid at the body, and he didn't try to overdo too much. I say one pretty decisively, and like disappointment when it comes to this that it wasn't against Fulton, because there's the legit there, number one versus number two. Good job for me when he's going in there. He didn't go out early. He fought valiantly throughout, particularly the body attack, because I've always been a proponent when it comes to the body attack. If you can focus on that, you can break down your opponent just headhunting. You have to have immense power. You have to have like Deontay Wilder level power to be a headhunter. And focus on the body and break down your opponent so you can headhunt later on. Leo's going to learn that. When's Fulton getting into the ring? Because I now gives me more incentive to see that fight.
As I mentioned, Stephen Fulton was supposed to be the initial opponent for Leo. It's anticipated that he will fight Leo next. I believe there's a 180-day period for that fight to be made. From initial reports, I go back to you, Daniel. You can follow up, Gail. You mentioned how excited you are, Daniel, that Fulton and Leo will happen. Early prediction now, early thoughts now. When these two fighters eventually get in the ring, what do you see happening?
I can see Leo, let's say, going to this blueprint, focus on the body, but reading that a little bit, learning to counter when it comes into it, and putting distance on it when Leo tries to go for the fight out of those two. It's just mainly who's going to win. It's going to be the Fulton's counters. It's going to be the body attack of Leo. A very, very close fight. But I could probably, and this is one of the things that winning the championship does give you confidence. I could
Your thoughts, Gail?
I lost part of Daniel's commentary there to follow up on, but it's a good fight to make. Again, there's a limit about the population of top level talent available right now. We've still got, little less than half a year to go in 2020 without, necessarily seeing a lot of really big fights. These guys are going to step into the breach, and they should. And given Legal's performance on Saturday, it becomes a lot more interesting of a fight with Fulton and a lot more even fight. In fact, I hesitate to say that the momentum has shifted. So, well worth looking for.
This fight took place at the Mohegan Sun in Uncasville, Connecticut. There was an interim fight on the undercard, another junior featherweight bout. I don't want to talk about that, but because the overall fight itself, it was but I want to talk about kind of what can only be described as a candidate for knockout of the year. Joe George fighting by the name of Escudero, excuse me, in the opening bout of the Showtime card. I think this was a rematch. Daniel, I'm going to you on this one. But here's the thing. I don't know how good Joe George is based on what I've seen. But I know one thing. He scored a sensational finish.
Woo-hoo-hoo. When you talk about sensational, man, I felt bad for Escudero. Like, he tried. I'll admit, he tried to get up, but it's just the mind was willing, but the body did not. And it came out of nowhere too. It legitimately came out of nowhere. They were fighting pretty evenly throughout, and shot, bow. And it wasn't like I said, shot where Escudero fell flat in the face. He fell flat on his back. Boom. He's out. It was a spectacular fight. It's spectacular fight as far as how it ends. It's going to be interesting to see. One knockout can make, like I said, can make you a star in certain ways. We had to see how this goes, and like I said, it's the right division to do it, and without everybody leaving out.
I go to you, Gail.
You hear us, Gail?
She had to step out. In your eyes, do you agree? Candidate for KO of the year in 2020.
That addressed to me, I'm back. Yes, it was. We have a fairly short list, honestly, but we've had some dandies. What was so nice about that particular knockout is, to me, George was losing on the cards. I believe he was at the time, and it just came bang out of nowhere. That little short check left uppercut. Damn, you don't quite see many of those. So I like the rarity of it, and the suddenness of it, and when the referee doesn't even need to administer a count, that's a KO of the year candidate right there. You don't have to count somebody out. No need. That's a good sign.
Any other fights you want to talk about on that card, or do you want to just y'all want to just move on to some other action?
I think we can spare the poor listeners. You know what? It was a decent card for Showtime to kind of shake their own rust off. This is the pandemic environment is new for them. They've chosen the Mohegan Sun scene of a lot of good fights. As their anchor, their version of the bubble. They're going to call it the fight sphere. I do think one thing worth mentioning is the absence of one member of a longtime broadcast team, one Mr. Paulie Malignaggi, who has been fired by Showtime because he finally ran his mouth once too many times. And it wasn't the worst thing he ever said, but I think Showtime and their masters at CBS and everywhere else and Viacom were finally tired of trying to defend Paulie to the shareholders and said, bye-bye. So who steps into his place? Abner Mares steps in. Abner's been doing a lot of work for PBC, a lot of the Fox Sports 1 type cards, FS1 cards, rocking some pink hair. And Abner does a very nice job. He does. He doesn't have the fire of Paulie. He's equally as opinionated. If you hear him doing a podcast, he can let it go. But I think he's minding his manners right now. For the first outing, trying to fit in with the rest of the broadcast crew, he did fine. So nice work by Abner, and I'll look forward to seeing him. Be interesting to see what the heck happens to Paulie. You think he's destined for bare knuckle land, Michael?
I don't know where he's going to head.
I think he's heading for nothing but trouble. So
for those who do not know, and I want to bring Daniel into this because I want his opinion. As Gail alluded to, Paulie Malignaggi, just days before this card was to take place, how can I put this? It wasn't the fact that he got fired for what he said, Daniel. It was the fact that he got fired for the fact that he wouldn't retract what he said. He wouldn't have a mea culpa for what he said privately. They had a meeting with him and the suits at Showtime. Stephen S. And for those who do not know, we all know what we're in right now in this current moment. With deaths of Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and others, and in the context of Black Lives Matter and the fight for social justice, in the fight against race, in the fight against injustice in terms of racial lines, Malignaggi basically ran off his mouth saying that institutional racism doesn't exist and blah, 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 and a whole bunch of other things. This is not the first time he's said this. This is not the first time he's been popping off of the mouth. If you follow him on Twitter, he's been talking this way for a while now. And this time, given our current social and political climate, it finally caught up with him. He wouldn't apologize for it. And Showtime subsequently gave him the boot for not, retracting anything he has said after having been asked to explain himself and essentially apologize. Your reaction to the news regarding Malignaggi, some will ask why now. Personally, I will ask why not, because, he's been out of pocket for a while. But just your thoughts on that whole matter, Daniel.
Charlie Murphy put it best when it came to one of his true Hollywood stories when talking about Rick James. Paul Malignaggi, in the subject that ultimately got him fired, has been a habitual line stepper. You can pretty much already tell who he's going to vote for in November. But you're right in the fact comments that got him fired. It was the fact that he wouldn't apologize. Now, if you're able to find the interview first, because as soon as the firing came out, I felt the channel interview put that video on private as fast as they could.
Yeah, you can't find no initial comments anywhere right now. Nowhere. I said you can't find his initial comments anywhere.
They made that video private. Yeah, like I said, unless you were able to find a Wayback Machine on it. But up to that point, he was speaking in many areas. And in the air interview, what he said was correct when it came to boxing in this sense, where he tried to the dominant fighters being African American is fading, and now you're seeing the era of Europeans or Central Asians are becoming the dominant force. He's not wrong. A lot of the fighters that have come up recently with Alexander Usyk, Vasily Lomachenko, almost the entire light heavyweight division at this point. But obviously the comment that got him off was, you mentioned it, the fact that he said that in 20, there's still daily protests in the city where George Floyd died, in New York City, and in an environment where not too far from here, not too far from New York City in Valley Stream, there are people standing guard right now in a black woman's house because for 2 years have been threatening her with guns. In this environment, there's no such thing as oppression now, racial oppression in 2020. First of all, that's tone deaf. We're not exactly the most traveled group right now. It used to be one of the most powerful passports in the world. Now makes you a pariah because of how we've handled the virus. So it's not a situation where Polly could jump on Sky and see heavily dose of employment now. He said his piece, make an apology, and continue with this, because what were you going to change? Everybody knows where you stand. It's not like you're hiding it. But yeah, if his mouth finally wrote a check that his ass.
And that's my thing. The fact that it wasn't just what he said, but then when he had the gall to go on social media and ask, "Where's the data? Where's the data? Where's the data?" And folks hit him with data, he kept doubling down on the ignorance. You cannot have that stance in 2020, given what's going down now and what's been going down. You cannot have that stance in 2020, given who's in the White House and all the things problematic about him and the people around him. It's just not going to fly. You come off as stuck on stupid as said 45. And if you had noticed, he's not that popular figure. And in terms of going anywhere, to your point, Daniel, he's right, because in the era of COVID-19 and the way that virus and the pandemic is still ongoing and the numbers are rising, people don't want Americans there. either said you cannot enter, or if you do enter, you have to go through a round of tests here and a round of tests there. And guess what? You can't come back because of the number of cases that we're having here. It's on the rise. So yeah, Paulie, he's all the stuff that he has been saying over the years has come back to bite him in the ass. And he tried to get stubborn and he tried to get ballsy with the wrong group of folks. And he's out of here. He could have stayed in his lane. He could have stayed caping for Trump and whatnot. But, and people would have left him alone. People would say, okay, he's talking this and that. He's talking fool. But, he could have done that and still talk about boxing. But when you go to the suits who pay you and you still try to get froggy with them, they got the power. You got to go. It is what it is. Let's move on to one final fight here before we get to the news segment. And we're going to Thailand. And Srisaket Rungvisai, many remember him shocking the world, if you will, particularly if you're observers of the smaller weight divisions back in 2017 when he defeated Roman Gonzalez March 2017 to win the belt at 115. He splattered Chocolatito all over the ring in the rematch. And it got to the point where he progressed to become regarded as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. He lost to Gallo Estrada last year, and you haven't heard much from him since. He hasn't fought since he lost to Gallo Estrada in April of 2019, Gail. Well, he finally made his return to the ring, fighting former flyweight champion Amnat Ruenrong in Thailand. And okay, Srisaket won, but in my opinion, I finally was able to see the fight earlier today. He just was not that impressive. He got off to a very, very slow start, was cut in the third as a result of the headbutt. And no, for those who have seen Amnat Ruenrong fight, it wasn't a case of him being dirty. Both of them came together just simultaneously. They just butted heads, and there was a big gash over SSR's left eye, I believe it was. But he came on late. But my problem with this, Gail, is that this is the third fight in a row that he started off slow and has had to rally. So the question I pose to you, yes, he's quote unquote back, but as the title of this episode suggests, is he on the decline?
Well, the running theme in tonight's show is that the pandemic got to say, and the pandemic is shaping a whole lot of what's going on. So how do we know that his performance, which is admittedly was at least a step behind what we're used to seeing, was he simply rusty? Was he disoriented because he's been shut down for so long? Was he still trying to figure out what the hell happened to him against Estrada, which was just a tactically messed up fight? He kept trying to turn southpaw in the whole fight. It was a disaster. I mean, for such a good performer, I can't remember a fight that was tactically such a disaster. And now he comes out with this fight. He didn't exactly inspire anybody's confidence. Yes, he won. Yes, he's still got some firepower. He's never had a whole lot of defense. He's kind of just a come forward and have at it guy. We all know that. But you have to wonder where the old pop was, that he used to have when he was fighting at super flyweight. The younger, the smaller weight divisions have this reputation for fighters aging quickly. And he's 33 years old, and he's had some barn burner fights. So did we see Rungvisai getting old overnight? Did we just see him being rusty? Did we see him trying to recover from his mistakes in his last fight still haunting him? Or did we see Ruenrong, who's 40, by the way, who's 40, he's past his prime, but did he impose his will on Rungvisai? Was it a matter of simply a good performance by a fighter, clearly is on the decline? I don't think we got any of those questions really answered. Everybody's got a different opinion about this, but now you have to look at this and look at how badly he was beaten by Estrada in his last fight, and now putting two and two together and thinking, well, that Roman Gonzalez sure as hell looked pretty good in his last fight, in contrast. Wouldn't you love to see these two get together and see if Chocolatito can get his revenge? Isn't that what everybody wants to see? I think it's going to happen. Now, Rungvisai says he wants to come back after Estrada. I don't know. I think that would be a huge mistake on his part. I think Estrada would definitely take him out again. Chocolatito? I think Chocolatito would beat him at this point too. I think his day is done. But I do think Estrada would be the tougher of the two. So it'll be interesting to see whose paths cross in the near future. I'm not going to hate on seeing either one, though. I'm not going to be picky about it.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Given how he looked against Rungvisai, forget not just Gallo and Chocolatito. If they were to pit him against an Ancajas, Ioka, even a Tanaka who's moving up from 112 pounds, that Srisaket that we saw, he lose to all of them.
Yeah, that's true. If that's the thing about it, though, is we have, unfortunately, especially a lot of the fights this year, you have to have the handicap of how serious did everything happen because of the virus. Because situation where it's a fighter that hasn't fought in a very long time, who and who's also fighting somebody that, while it didn't happen much this time, has the reputation of getting a little dirty when things don't go his way. I have to take, unfortunately, all of that into the account to see how we have to judge Rungvisai when it comes to this fight. Because it's a combination to me of Russ. It's a combination of the fact that he probably didn't have much time to train. Takes away a lot of sparring partners. And going to like a different location, had to follow different protocols. Because we have to remember, this is the Matchroom fight camp in England. So we have to see ways. No, I don't think this one is fight camp. Although I may be wrong. But it's tough to see. We don't know what he's looking like if he actually had enough time to train. I have to say we have to do a wait and see. Probably has to fight somebody if they're ready for Gallo, which I don't think he is. Gallo, this. God help him if somehow, some way they actually put Tanaka against him. If they want to put Tanaka against him, I'm fine. SSR is probably going to get knocked out if that's the one we're seeing. You could probably to see, considering the circumstances. How about now?
It's still, your sound is still going in and out. There you go. It's getting better now. Let me read a
My
comment.
headset.
Okay.
I said,
While
I
you
said,
get
if yeah, gonna go in and out. Sorry.
okay, but let me read a quick comment from the chat here. Gus, who's our usually on the show with us, he's listening live from the chat. He said he posed the same question about after SSR's shaky performance against Iran Diaz over a year ago. Yeah, Gus. Gus from Corruption in Boxing. Shout out to him. The Diaz bout. He came out slow in that bout, and he kind of rallied. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Gus. Didn't he get shook in that bout? Didn't he get hurt? It was questionable whether he got knocked down in that bout against Diaz. Uh, the Estrada bout, he started slow, and then this fight with Rungvisai, he started slow. He mentioned that he wanted a fight. He wanted to fight Roman Gonzalez. That he wants to fight uh, Gallo Estrada. He wants to fight each of those men for a third time, but he's going to have to do more, a lot more, if he's going to think he can win that bout. So yeah, I would suggest now after this, maybe get another couple of fights or two just to get him active, just to try to get him sharp. But based on this performance, he has a long way to go before he even thinks about stepping into the ring with the elite fighters at 115 pounds. Let's go to the news here until Daniel comes back and get his sound fixed on his side. I think he's joining us back right now. Let's go into some news. Um, we started the show recapping Showtime's first event uh, in the era of COVID. Let's ask an interesting question here. We what we and I'll go back to you, Gail. Based on what we saw from this initial event from Showtime, based on the event that we saw from Matchroom, they had their first event over the weekend as well. Sam Egginson, I think he won a very, very exciting fight Saturday, from all I've heard. Based on what we saw from the top ranked shows last month, kind of give your thoughts on each of their shows. How would you rate them? How would you compare the three between this initial Showtime show, what you saw from Matchroom over the weekend, and what you saw from Top Rank last month?
So Matchroom started what it's calling Fight Camp. They have set up a new outdoor venue, no fans, on the grounds of the Matchroom headquarters, which is the old Barry Hearn estate. This is Eddie's childhood home, which when you look at it is sort of mind-blowing. It's beautiful property in Essex with a view off in the distance of the London skyline. I mean, it could not be more English garden, picture perfect. So they put up the ring, they put up the lights. The ring walk is from the back of the house. I mean, it's hard to call this big estate a house, but it is a house. And they come down the stairs, come on in. They had fireworks. They played Sweet Caroline, the whole thing. The main event was an excellent fight. It was a high stakes, sort of British regional fight. Ted Cheeseman won that fight.
Cheeseman, there you go. Cheeseman, thank you.
Got
Thank
the
you.
crap beat out of him. Fair play to him. He was very respectful in his defeat. The two guys clearly have a lot of respect for each other. It was a real barn burner, bang up fight. A perfect fight. Very easy to watch in this beautiful setting. And there were a lot of regional fights like that. And that was a very smart thing to do for their first outing, to have essentially local guys. And it seemed, from all appearances, to come off really, really well. They didn't lose anybody to testing, which is interesting. So we'll see what happens as they carry on. And we're going to talk a little bit about their next outing in the preview section. So, Matchroom, with the setting they were handed, I mean, honestly, it was really hard to lose. It was truly spectacular. And it begs the question why American promoters haven't worked harder to find an outdoor venue. They're intrinsically safer from what we know. They solve a lot of problems. My only thought is when Top Rank really wanted to come out of the chute first and provide ESPN some programming, the better place for an outdoor venue for them to have enough local competition and local sparring. I mean, their choices were either California or Nevada. And I don't think the California State Athletic Commission was comfortable enough to play. So that lets out doing it outside at StubHub, AKA, the new name. So they were, the MGM welcomed them, could accommodate them. So they ended up indoors. I would love to see them try to make it work outdoors at StubHub where they can fight year round and where potentially they could accommodate, maybe a handful of fans. So we'll see. But having said that, then you've got Showtime, which followed a very similar model to Top Rank. They've got one venue, it's both the hotel and the fight arena at Mohegan Sun. It's a partner they've worked with many, many times. They are kind of anchoring the East Coast tri-state boxing community. And it makes a lot of sense to give that crowd of fighters a nearby venue to work with so they don't have to travel. We have to also remember fighters crossing the country to engage in fights are going to be subject to quarantines, which means they have to sit on their ass for 14 days. And that's not going to happen. A promoter is not going to pay for a fighter to sit around and quarantine themselves for 2 weeks before a fight. So you kind of got the West Coast, bubble module, and now you've got the East Coast bubble module. And I think they did a perfectly fine job. They, lost their main event, but they learned from watching Top Rank, and they had Tramaine Williams ready to step up from the co-main, and Bates ready as the backup for either the main event or co-main event if they needed another fighter to step in. So he got the call. He had a little bit of a rough outing, but he was a perfectly fine opponent. So it meant all of the fights on the card came off in one form or another. So that was very smart of them to learn that. And I expect, it was just their first outing. They'll get a little smoother and a little better as they continue. I will say, though, Top Rank, they had the guts to get out there first, give it a try. Some of those cards had some stumbles. Yeah, we had some, club level fights, anchoring a lot of those broadcasts, but they did it. I think their staging is outstanding. I tip my hat to the way they filled up that ballroom to make it look exciting. A lot of the lighting, a lot of the technology. You do not miss the fans. I don't find myself looking around the venue because there's so much going on dressing it up. And they did it enough to get the hang of it. We had some crazy emerging stars from this whole first wave, Clay Collard, El Maestro, the fighting preschool teacher, Gabriel Murataya. I mean, who knew we'd be talking about guys like that? And who doesn't want to see, Clay Collard again? Talk about a crazy thing. Now let's just hope poor Jamal Herring can finally clear a test for Pete's sake. And
right.
The poor man's going nuts. But he's seen worse. That man's seen worse. He's taken really, really good humor and hanging in there. So props to Top Rank. For venue, Matchroom has just a naturally spectacular venue, and they're going to own the British market. But right now, Showtime's got a little work to do to catch up to Top Rank, but they're going to have that opportunity because their fight lineup as we go through the fall is outstanding. It's really, considering what they've got to work with, my hat's off to them. Making the dueling Charlo, co-main fights, getting some significant bouts on the calendar. Good for them. So not all is lost in boxing. We're hanging in there. Boxers, the boxing community, we all can say to ourselves, we've been through worse, we've been through crazy, nothing stops us. They're going to make it happen at one level or another. And truly, you cannot say that for a lot of other professional or major amateur sports in the world right now. So I think boxing can take a bow overall.
I'll go to you, Daniel. In terms of actual fights, I mean, hell, the Showtime card on the 26th of September, that card alone, in terms of actual fights, that's going to be better than the entire month of fights from what Top Rank gave us in July. Just being completely honest about that, it's one of the best cards of the year. Even you know, even if there was this ongoing pandemic, that's a hell of a card. Uh, but the events itself, I'll pose the same question to you that I posed to Gail. Kind of give your kind of ranking system in terms of what you've seen from the major promoters in terms of organizing events, given this current crisis right now.
All three have similar environments. When it's, I would probably say that Matchroom right now, because they're outside, it does get a little bit of a more does with Top Rank when it does to Showtime right now, because it's something about being inside an empty building that doesn't make it look into inviting. Whereas here, doing it outside, the openness gives it a little bit better way. Everybody's gonna have a chance to work things out. Every single thing has to fall into it. Like you mentioned, like if it can't be no, you have to go through a lot of quarantine to go through to get into the UK. The situation with either Top Rank or Showtime. Everything depends upon how the virus is being mitigated in the area right now. If you probably have to get it at the Showtime, because right now the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast Tri-State area is the part of the country that's actually this thing the best that it can. But it will be the same way. The thing at Top Rank is going to have the because they've been first, so they've worked out a lot of the kinks. I probably like at the end of the time, it's probably going to go towards Showtime just because they have so many fights lined up. Seeing with the Fulton fight, they are ready to make sure that they don't have to lose a main event, at least when it comes to one opponent. Whereas with Showtime, we've seen fights in the main card because they did not have another opponent ready. More than likely, Showtime's going to wind up winning unless I forgot. We even forgot to mention the zone, Fantasy Springs, Golden Boy. Unless a Canelo fight happens and they do it real big, Showtime's probably going to win out just because they're going to have a lot more fights to stage it on Mohegan Sun.
Well, in terms of Golden Boy, first and foremost, they need to hurry up and come up with an opponent for Canelo. They're talking about September 12th. He's supposed to appear in the ring. What is it? We're recording this on August the 3rd. Still no opponent yet. They need to get on the ball about that. That's first and foremost. But right now, I didn't see the Matchroom card live. I was out and about running errands, tending a business. I'll be sure to watch it after the show. But from Gail's breakdown and from opinions that I've seen on social media, it was terrific. It's in a terrific venue. It's outdoors, kind of a private facilities. I think Eddie Hearn's estate or one of his estates. While Top Rank and Showtime are very similar. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to the atmosphere, particularly for Matchroom when the Dillian White fight happens, when the Pursoon Taylor rematch happens later on this month. Um, you're listening to episode 294, Pound for Pound Box Report, and I'm your host, Michael. I was in a Zoom uh, kind of chat amongst some social media buddies of mine uh, um, over the weekend on Saturday, as a matter of fact, this past Saturday, and I got a question. Shout out to Black Amazon on Twitter. She asked me a question about. It was initially a question about Conor McGregor. She had heard that he was going to try to fight Pacquiao, and I was like, I don't see that happening. But in terms of Pacquiao, what I'm hearing is there's talk about him fighting Terence Bud Crawford. And I go to you, Gail. Kind of in the early stages right now. It's far from anything being confirmed. Um, whether he fights, whether Crawford fights Pacquiao or someone else, um, it's been a minute. It's not a case of it's been a minute since we've seen Crawford. He fought earlier this year. My point is, Gail, it's been a good while since we've seen him in a big, significant fight. A lot of people, I personally still hold him as my number one pound for pound fighter, though that position it's not as strong as it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. That's because of the rise of Loma. That's because of the rise of other fighters. It's admittedly all the big names at welterweight or across the street with PBC. Uh, we talked last week about Spence having his comeback fight against Garcia. You got Thurman over at PBC. You got contenders like Ugas Porter, who's at PBC. The question is, Gail, when are we going to see Bud back in a big fight? Because as far as I'm concerned, he kind of needs it right now.
Yeah, Bud is getting dangerously close to the put up or shut up borderline. His toes just sitting right on there. He doesn't seem to recognize what's going on around him. And if he wants to sit it out, that's fine. I will grant a fighter that prerogative. I think that with your the limits on a fighter's career with the clock ticking, I think it's a little bit dangerous, but I get it if they've gotten to that level where they want their risk reward ratio to be where they've always had it. Because right now it's not. The money isn't there. The money has to make sense for everybody. These are businesses. But what I don't particularly love is him making these demands of he wants the fans there. He wants to be paid more if the fans aren't there. Son, you need to take a business class, okay? You need to
Fighters are not. That's not a reality right
it's
now.
It's not at all.
Given what we're going through right now, all major fighters are going to have to take a pay cut. There's no live gate. They have no choice.
Right. You have to decide what's best for me in the long run. And they're all going to come down, to the decision in a different way. And they're all going to, make the choice for themselves. It's not a uniform one size fits all. I get it. There are some guys who think, all right, it's more important for me to keep my career and my trajectory on track. I'm going to take a little bit of a pay hit. I'm going to sacrifice now to make it pay off later. That's a valid conclusion. There are other guys who say, at the level I'm at, it doesn't make sense to do that. I'm willing to wait. I've established myself. It's all about the money now. It's about, getting down to the finish line and cashing out. And I'm going to hold out. My name's big enough to make it through this without having to take the other path. Okay. There's a very limited amount of talent that can say something like that. Maybe Crawford's one of them. Maybe not. Maybe
no,
not.
No, he ain't. No, he ain't, Gail. No, he's not. No, he's
Well,
not. If Canelo's taking a pay cut for his upcoming fight, whenever that is,
well,
don't
that
tell me
remains,
Bud is.
but you know what? That does remain to be seen. Okay, that's interesting. We do not know for a fact what's going to happen with Canelo. I I find it very interesting that the date that is normally penciled right in there for Canelo, which is September 12th. Guess what else is happening that day? Check your calendar, gentlemen. That's when you have one Mike Tyson and Roy Jones getting it on in that damned exhibition the same night. Hello there. Do you think if Canelo was already a little reluctant, a little on the fence about that particular date, struggling to figure out, who's the opponent, what makes sense, Callum wants too much money, I don't want to take a hit with somebody younger, all the variables. And then he looks over at that and says, oh, hell, shit, and he gets undercut by that. There's nothing completely sacred about that date. I'm thinking he may put the brakes on that date and pick another date. But he has to be careful. The calendar is filling up. We just talked about it. Showtime is ramping up with these, club level plus type fights right now to shake off their own cobwebs and their own ring rust in producing the shows, so that when they get down to Charlo, Derevchenko, they got it down. Everything's good. They're ready to roll. It's everything's locked in. The problem is less and less dates become available, and if there's really any thought that we're going to get a Canelo Triple G fight, maybe not this year. I sincerely doubt it, but maybe at the very beginning of 2021, he's starting to put some risk on the table there. I'm not sure where Canelo's head is at. He's normally been his work ethic has been normally so good. He stays in shape. He still seems to have a tremendous passion for what he does. He just barely turned 30 years old a couple of weeks ago. That's really fairly extraordinary if you think about it. He's been fighting professionally since he was 15 years old. That's a hell of a story, especially in today's world. Where is he going with this? God knows he's got enough money to live on. He does not have to lift a finger again if he doesn't want to. But I do think he wants to. But you do need to look out there and say, all right, what's left for him? Exactly. Yeah, there's good fights to still be made. No question about it. I know a whole lot of people who are just itching to see him and Andre get in the ring.
But I want to kind of make a turn back to Bud.
Yeah.
In terms of where do you see him going?
So where Bud is in the danger zone because he doesn't have Canelo's name or pull. On the other hand, I get it. He's at a certain level where, you don't want to throw caution to the wind and just fight for fight's sake. But I do think if he doesn't want to take a decent interim fight at a reasonable price without the fans, he just needs to go sit down and be quiet.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Past guest of Pound for Pound Box Report, my brother over at Three Kings Boxing, Bo, from Truth and Facts About Sports. He, as well as the head man behind Three Kings Boxing, 2K, they both have made that argument on the Three Kings Boxing podcast that the biggest mistake that Terence Crawford made was signing that extension with Top Rank a couple of years ago. Hindsight being 2020, given that there's nothing really on the table right now for him in terms of big fights, other than a possible Pacquiao bout, do you agree?
Given the current circumstances, yes. And to sign with the PBC. He did have a chance to, as Aaron Spence put it, cross the street. out of loyalty or out of the fact that he was going to get that Pacquiao fight, only to watch Pacquiao himself go to the people. So the demands that we hear him make, as far as paying, that's very, very, very tough to try to take in, especially when it's not a situation where he can demand like they're going to fight in Omaha. In that bubble in Las Vegas, and you know for a fact, given the trajectory that things are going, we're probably not going to see any fans for the duration of 2020 and more than likely of 2021, the way things are going. You have to back down to certain things. Now, circumstances aside, when it comes into what the fighters going into it, this is where the pandemic actually helps out. It gives but a possible mulligan into not taking really, really tough fights. You can say the pandemic's not letting me train properly, or I had to feed off the fans. So excuse to probably take an easy fight to get yourself active. Make sure that you're still keeping in shape. And it won't hurt you that much. But once this is going to start, people are going to call out Bud. I'm like, yes, he's on some people's, he's on a good amount of people's at a certain point, that's going to go away because anyway, we'll fight soon. So there's other areas that are going to factor into it. I do feel bad for Bud though, because a lot of these things were out of his control, but the signing to a term was in his control. So I feel a little bad that circumstances wound up being what they are right now. But knew where the water was treading that welterweight at your division. You could have stayed at 140 if you wanted to. Years, but chose to make the jump, knowing full well that the politics of the division were not in your favor. And that right now.
Putting everything on the table, I'll ask both of you. The likelihood that we will see an eventual Terence Crawford Manny Pacquiao bout either later this year or early next year. If you had to rate it on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being it to not likely happen at all, and 5 being it to almost guaranteed, how would you rate it?
Are we limited to time frame or just yes or no?
Like be it say in 6 months from today, 6 to 8 months from today.
6 to 8 months from today, a 1. Before the end of 2021, a 4.75. Because I'm hedging.
Same question to you, Daniel. Let's extend it from a year. We're recording this August 3rd, 2020. Let's extend it to August 3rd, 2021.
Okay, what was the question again?
The likelihood of a fight happening between Crawford and Pacquiao
in the next 12 months.
In the next 12 months.
And then you said 1 unlikely.
5
you said 1
highly
unlikely
likely.
Being
1 to 5.
Right?
1 to 5. One being highly unlikely, 5
1
being is basically a guarantee.
A one. Would you change
And
your
why?
mind? Would you change your mind if you extended
One.
that timeline?
One. There's a reason why Manny is. There's a reason why Manny ran. There's a reason Manny ran to Heyman to make sure he had no way of stepping into the ring with Bud. It's not going to happen. They can have negotiations. They need to have some type of negotiations as far as talking, but we all know how it's going to wind up. You're leaving in Bob Arum and Al Heyman, and unless this is an absolute last option, this is together. And unfortunately, when it comes to Manny, he has plenty of options in the PBC. So yeah, no, it's not. I'm sorry, like it's not happening. The only way it happens again is if Manny himself makes the jump back to Top Rank.
Well, Manny is technically a free agent, but you're right. It's the Heyman connection. And Heyman is notoriously risk averse. However, Manny's been known to, Manny's been known to sign on the dotted line for enough money. He's pretty practical. And, he doesn't have a whole lot of fights left in him. I mean, he just needs to kill time before he runs for president of the Philippines. And he's got about another year and a half, I think, to kill. So, we'll see. But Bud has very few options. You're right. Manny has a ton of options. Bud has almost none. And I've got to say, I can't help but wonder whether this opens the door for a really massive step-up challenge by one Virgil Ortiz, who's definitely available. That's makeable between those two organizations. They've worked together before. And, Canelo did it against Floyd. That's a role model Virgil can look to in challenging himself against Bud.
But the problem is how long will Bud have to wait? Because we know, first of all, Virgil Ortiz. I thought you was talking about the junior welterweight champion. My bad.
I'm talking about Virgil, but Golden Boy's up and coming welterweight, and
are they willing to work? Is Golden Boy willing to work with Arum like that?
When the money's right, you bet. Yes, and Golden Boy's in a position where they cannot afford to turn down an event like that. So I think they'd go along to get along. They have done it before, so I think they'd do it again.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Go ahead, Daniel. Right quick.
No, I was about to say, like, yeah, I could definitely see that fight happening. Because
go ahead.
I said it. I was on the record. At the end of the year, I want to see Virgil Ortiz win the title fight. This could be.
Let's move on to talk about some news here. Not some news here to put the preview some fights, and I'm going to you, Gail, to talk about this first fight to start the conversation off. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Michaela Mayer and how impressive she was in her last outing on Top Rank. At that time, I mentioned that Mayer, she's ready for a title shot right now. And I mentioned how I would love to see her eventually fight Terry Harper, who is the WBC champion at 130 pounds. Well, Harper, she's stepping into the ring this weekend on the 7th of August on DAZN's second card, headlining that event. Going to defend her belt against Natasha Jonas. I've seen Taylor a couple times, well, 2-3 times, excuse me. I like what I've seen of her. Jonas is a tough woman. It's not going to be a pushover. I lean towards Harper, but more to the point, more than anything, I want a good fight. And I think, Gail, we have the potential to see a very, very a good bout, good women's bout Kind of your preview of this upcoming bout between Harper and Jonas.
Again, the pandemic has given these two women the opportunity to star in a main event. Harper is going to defend her two belts. She's the WBC and IBO Super Featherweight World Champion, 10-0, 5 KOs. So she's got a British rival in Jonas, who's also had 10 fights, one loss on her record, but 7 knockouts. You know, that's a fairly impressive knockout ratio in the women's game, especially, you know, we're talking super featherweight here. So they both know this is a chance with lots and lots of eyes on them to impress, to make sure they make a statement, they get another opportunity. There's, you know, some fairly significant bad blood between them. The trainers for the respective women have talked a little trash, you know, as surrogates with each other, whispers about stuff going on in the gym. And I like it. I like it. I like them building up interest in this fight. And just like Michaela Mayer, who kind of got her opportunity by default, they're going to have a chance to impress the public and see what happens. You know, Harper is certainly the favorite, no question. And they allege that while Jonas is impressive, if she can't score early, she fades. That's their criticism of her. Well, she does have some power on the women's side of the fence. So when you have some power, you don't necessarily need to worry about going all the way in the fight. So that's what makes it very interesting to watch. And I wish them the best performances possible on both sides, and may the best woman win.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on this fight?
Oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. Jonas with that KO ratio, Harper with that experience, it's going to be a fun fight. And I'm really glad they're able to step up here. I'm favoring her. That's probably the better matchup for Mayer if she's going to be the one that's going to be lined up next. Because I myself probably said I could probably wait a little bit, but I can see how some people are saying that Mayer is ready now. And particularly, like, it's a good time to do it with, unfortunately, the other fighters. Granted, we all know for circumstances beyond have been currently been sidelined for the time being. So, but should be a good fight, and one thing it'll do, it will take the taste out of last from the zone out of our mouths.
Let's move on to this is going to be the last fight I want to talk about, and it's going to fight as we close down the show, and I'll go back to you, Daniel. Jamal James, he's going to fight Tomas Dulorme for a quote-unquote vacant interim belt at 147 pounds WBA. You know how they love to collect sanctioning fees with their interim belts and all this other stuff. We've talked about that before. I'm having a hard time picking this fight, Daniel, because I've seen Jamal James fight, but I can't get a good read on him. Sometimes I think he's okay, and then the other time I see him, I'm like, yeah, just meh when I see him. Based on your assessment of him, your thoughts about him and your thoughts about this fight against Dulorme.
WBA doing WBA things again. Between this and with the Gervonta Davis Santa Cruz fight, Why am I not surprised that this is going to be for an interim title? It's going to be Dulorme to me. He's a more experienced fighter. Yes, he's the one that has a lot more to prove because he's in the outer periphery as far as contender at welterweight. But that's pretty much what it is. Like they're fighting. It doesn't really mean much because if he wins, do you honestly see Thomas Dulorme fighting? Yeah, perhaps, but would you honestly be able to see Thomas Dulorme fight Manny Pacquiao
Oh no.
for the WBA title? I don't. I don't. But this is the bullshit that comes with the WBA. But I expect.
What say you about this fight, Gail?
This is one of those keep my career alive fights for Dulorme. He's got perhaps more intrinsic motivation in this fight. I'm not sure I have a good feel for it. And once again, I get it. You're probably tired of hearing me say this, but the pandemic environment has scrambled a lot of things for these guys. You know, who stayed busy? Whose mind stayed right? You know, what are their circumstances? You know, you sort of toss the normal expectations up in the air and just, you know, in a fight like this, it's close enough that it's sort of a pick 'em. You know, it's who's right in the mind first, whose focus is intact, who's come through this better, probably will have more to do with it than any skill level, and who can impose their will on the other man, which is always the case, backed up with skill. In this case, I'm not sure the skill levels of either guy will be the determining factor, which could make it very interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's at this point where I can't get a good read on it. And I'm not even going to try to make a prediction on this. I'm just going to watch it and enjoy it for what it is.
Come on.
I can't. Read a couple of comments. Read a couple of comments in the chat from Gus. He say forget Canelo. He's more worried. He's looking forward to the Iron Mike Roy Jones exhibition.
There you go.
He says he thinks that he thinks that Bud and Spence in the chat. He said Bud and Spence will happen in 2021. I tend to agree, though. The more I think about it, I think it's going to happen mid to late 2021. He says that both are looking to fight in September, so synchronizing their fight dates in preparation for unification in 2021. That makes sense. I just hope it comes off that way. Going to go around the panel here. First of all, I want to thank Gus for joining us on the show. If you like what you heard on YouTube, we're airing live on YouTube. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and also subscribe to us on all podcast platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Google Podcast, and the like. And please make sure to leave a comment on iTunes and Spotify and whatnot. A high review, 5-star review, I will make sure to read during the show. I'll go to the panel here. Begin the show starting with ladies first. Going to end the show starting with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media on the side. One of your many gigs, as well as your semi or regular appearances on TMZ right now. Let the folks know where they can find us.
Hot off another appearance with Harvey and Charles today. Check your local listings. Shout out to Peter, the sports god, for catching a screen capture. He must have the fastest trigger finger on the planet on his phone for catching that this afternoon. Very, very kind of him to post. You can, yes, occasionally find me on TMZ Live, but I am much more regular in my own home venue, which is Communities Digital News. That's COM, COMM, Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com. on the various platforms. I'm at P Bar Pro San Diego. And yeah, you can check that TMZ screenshot. You know, when Kim and Kanye are in the news, I get a phone call. What can I say?
I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk uh, boxing, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
You can, like I said, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Ruckus99, RAWKUZ99. Then you can catch me on there. Getting some things ready back up, luckily, but keep your heads up if you are in the tri-state area tomorrow, because we don't know what's going to happen. Apparently, this truck was stormed at state tonight, I think, Mike. So good luck to everybody.
Yeah, luckily, here where I reside in South Carolina, we hadn't the impact hasn't been that significant, but yeah, it is going up the East Coast, and thoughts and prayers to you and yours and everybody else in the tri-state area along the East Coast. Hopefully, they won't get hit heavily by that tropical storm. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Well, first of all, before that, let me reiterate once again, we do a Ladies Love Boxing show every year, a show exclusively of women talking the sweet science. Again, fingers crossed. The goal is to do the show on the week of the 22nd, which will be the week, I believe, of Katie Taylor, Delphine Pursoon rematch. Check me again on that date, Gail. Let me look to make sure. Yeah, Katie Taylor, Delphine Pursoon, which will be on the undercard of Dillian White and Povetkin. If you're interested in being a guest on Pound for Pound Box Report, if you're a women's fight fan, media observer, casual, I don't care. Just hit me up on Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page. The letter P, the number 4, the letter P Boxing Report. Or just hit me up on my personal Twitter page, Brother JR at Brother JR76, or hit me up on my Instagram, Brother JRSC. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Terry Harper and her fight against Jonas. We will do a recap of Jamal James and Tomas Dulorme. And we will do a preview of Jono Carroll, solid junior lightweight, who I like a lot. I like how he fights in the ring. I like his swag outside the ring. He's going to be fighting a guy by the name of Hughes. That fight is going to be on ESPN Plus. That's going to be on the 12th. On the 15th, you got Carl Frampton making his return to the ring. Michael Conlon is going to fight on the undercard of that bout. That fight is going to be on ESPN, on Showtime. This is where things really get kicked off in terms of their fight schedule. David Benavidez is fighting his mandatory, Angulo. Rolando Romero, who has some really salty things to say about Tank Davis earlier today. Check out that article on Three Kings Boxing, threekingsboxing.com. He's going to be fighting a guy by the name of Marinez, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And also on the 15th on the Zone, Cecilia Brack is going to be fighting Jessica McCaskill. So we will do a preview of all of those fights. So once again, for Gail from Communities Digital News, from Daniel from the Inscriber, I want to thank Gus, aka Corruption in Boxing, for joining us on the show. Episode 294 of Pound for Pound Box Report. Everybody have a good evening. Good night.